What makes fragrances so expensive? If you ever go online or you walk into a fragrance shop, you will most likely see all of the perfume bottles that cost more than $100. Some cost $200, $300, $400. I've seen $500 and $600 bottles of fragrances before. And you might be wondering, isn't that just alcohol and water in a nice bottle? And sometimes, but not necessarily. So the whole aspect of charging for a bottle of perfume is more complicated than you would expect. First of all, yes, perfume is mostly alcohol, and very, very high proof alcohol, more than your average bottle of whiskey, in fact. The thing about it, though, is that it also contains very expensive ingredients. Not all of them, actually. There's natural ingredients and then there's synthetic ingredients. Synthetic ingredients are almost always cheaper because you could just synthesize them and make them in a lab. Natural ingredients are harder to come across because usually the natural ingredients that are used in fragrances are rare. For example, consider oud. Oud is a very popular, very musky, woodsy, earthy scent that is derived from a very specific tree that has a mold infection within the trunk, and not all those trees have that mold infection. So, as you can imagine, locating a rare tree and then finding an even rarer variation of that rare tree is difficult. So and of course, once you cut down that tree for the oud to use in fragrance, it's going to be very difficult to produce more moldy trees to get more oud. So that just keeps making that ingredient more expensive. So naturally, when you put it in a bottle of perfume, that perfume is going to be quite expensive. So that's pretty much also the case with various other types of ingredients that you would see them more often in vintage perfumes compared to modern perfumes. For example, civet, which is the musk glands of the civet animal. A very popular civet note is in Chanel No. 5, of which they used real civet back in the day. They don't anymore, they use synthetic. But using that, any kind of natural rare ingredient will make the fragrance more expensive. It's also true with other types of musk. Sometimes they use deer musk. And also certain types of flowers. Even if the flowers aren't rare, you might need to use a large quantity of flowers to make a fragrance smell a specific way. For example, Creed has a very, very old fragrance called Fleurs de Bulgarie, or Flowers of Bulgaria. And that, I believe, has countless Bulgarian roses crushed into it. And also it's the same thing with Joy from Jean Patou, which I believe has more than 10,000 flowers crushed into it. And that's also why Joy was once considered the most expensive perfume in the world for a long time. So, ingredients mainly determine, not mainly, but a large part determine the price of a fragrance, but they're not the only thing. There's also the cost of the fragrance's appearance. Luxury brands, and I'm not talking only Chanel, only Dior, only whatever. I'm talking even, Creed, Zverev, even higher end, the most luxurious you can go. They take great pride in how their fragrances look, because, you could store perfume in anything, but you're not going to buy an expensive perfume that's being sold in a little, Starbucks cup compared to some sort of crystalline, majestic bottle. So, the thing is, some bottles are just regular glass, but some perfume bottles are made out of rare or artisan crystal. For example, Baccarat Rouge 540 is a very expensive French perfume, which I believe is made of authentic Baccarat French crystal. If it's not made of Baccarat crystal, I think it's a bit misleading. But I'm 99% sure it's authentic Baccarat crystal. And just the fact that it's made of that type of crystal, you're going to be paying more just for the bottle, because once the bottle's empty, it's still going to be valuable. That's not the case with all bottles. Some bottles, if they're just made of glass, it's just worth the glass. So it's not going to be worth that much more just for that. Although, there are some perfume bottles that have such a unique look that they do charge more just for that unique look. For example, Shalimar by Guerlain has a very nice, it's designed to look like an urn, kind of, and I believe also it was originally made of Baccarat, which it is not anymore, so it's technically not as valuable as it was before, but the bottle design is still so unique and still kind of nicely cut and crafted that it is, it does contribute to that overall price. Then the last thing that really contributes actually a lot to the perfume that you're buying, the price, is how much the company spends on marketing. So if you watch TV at all, you most likely have seen perfume commercials at some point. And anytime a brand starts running commercials or online ads or just any kind of advertisement at all, especially, those ads, they have a celebrity running through a field of flowers. And, when they hire celebrities, it's even more expensive. So, a lot of companies spend millions of dollars marketing their fragrance. And they have to get that money back somehow, so that's why they charge so much for their fragrances. If they charge $300 per bottle, or more, then, they're definitely, and they hype up this fragrance, and millions of people buy it, then of course they're going to make their money back. So, those are pretty much the main factors that determine a perfume's price, and the cheaper you buy a perfume, because of course there are certain perfumes that are less than $20, very cheap ones. That's because either they're almost entirely synthetic, which isn't a bad thing because they can still have very nice smells, or maybe they're not popular anymore, they're not, something's amiss. For example, this is Emeraude from Coty. I always like to use this as an example because this came out in 1921, which is the exact same year that Chanel No. 5 came out. And this was actually a very, very luxurious French kind of designer sort of fragrance. And it was actually the inspiration for Shalimar. So it was definitely had a prominent place from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. However, it has fallen out of favor in decades ago. It's now $14, while, for instance, Shalimar and Chanel No. 5 are both more than $100. So it really kind of depends on what happened to the perfume, how the perfume is going, how it's being marketed. Because Emeraude, now I'm not necessarily sure whether Emeraude, what kind of ingredients it uses, but I can say for sure it smells just like a much lighter version of Shalimar. And obviously you could save a lot of money buying that instead of Shalimar, just as an example, based on how, if a perfume is popular, it's going to be priced higher, because companies want to make that money when the hype is still high. And then if it loses its popularity, kind of fades into the shadows, like Drakkar Noir, for instance, which was a very popular men's fragrance in the 80s. Hugely, everyone was wearing it, everyone was buying it. Now hardly anyone ever wears it, even though it's still pretty much the same fragrance. So, tons of things affect the price of fragrances. And most likely, perfumes that are very expensive now will be probably pretty cheap in the next 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years. So it all just depends on all those factors. So if you have any opinions about why fragrances are so expensive, you can leave those down in the comments below. If you like the video, leave a like, maybe subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.